I'm going to cover these topics. Basically, what is the cooling demand and what are the growth estimates in cooling demand? Basic air conditioning concepts. So the contents, basically what I'm going to discuss is what is the cooling demand and what are the growth estimates of cooling demand. Basic air conditioning concepts. Then I will be briefly discussing on what are the thermally actuated cooling technologies, and I will be also discussing on types of evaporative cooling. Finally, the solar thermal air conditioning experimental study. Firstly, cooling demand and growth estimates. If you look at the electrical energy requirements as per International Energy Outlook of all the electrical energy intensive sectors, it is estimated that residential building sector shall be the highest electrical energy intensive sector and also shall register the highest growth rate in terms of electrical energy consumption. What it means is that previously, of all the electrical energy requirements, previously it was industrial sector which has the highest demand, but by 2050 it is estimated that even building residential sector will be crossing the industrial sector. So think about what is the reason for this. It is basically nothing but basically the increase in the cooling demand. Because there is a lot of increase in the cooling demand, we are expecting that uh, the residential buildings electrical demand will be crossing the industrial demand. So we need solutions to meet the cooling demand of the buildings. If we also look at non-OECD countries, that are especially India and China, they remain the fastest growing region in residential sector energy. Means in the total residential buildings, India and China are, because we have higher population, so automatically our residential building energy demand is going to be increased, and the growth rate is very high. If we look at what is the total amount of electrical energy consumption in various sectors, like we can see industries have around 41.71%, whereas domestic is around 24.35%. But by 2050, the domestic demand is going to, in fact, cross this industrial demand. Whereas commercial buildings, including software offices or government offices, all these combined, it will be around 8.35%. And there is also significant electrical energy consumption in agriculture, that is around 17.74%. So we need to come up with solutions to reduce this energy consumption. Similarly, if we are looking at in the domestic energy consumption itself, which type of energy is being used, mainly it is air conditioning and lighting. So these both technologies you consume around 90% of the electrical demand, whereas others include around 10%. So for commercial buildings, for residential buildings, especially air conditioning and ventilation, both will be around 40%. So for commercial buildings, we have air conditioning and fans around 40%. So this reduction has to be obtained. Even if we are looking at sector-wise growth in cooling demand, only cooling demand, if we are looking at 74% of the increase by 2037-38, we are looking at cooling demand in for only space cooling. So the space cooling growth is very high. So we need to come up with very fast solutions so that we can meet this load as well as reduce this electrical energy demand. In nutshell, if we are looking at, as per IEA estimates, in 2018 we have around 36 million air conditioners, but by 2050 it is expected that we will have around 1 billion air conditioners. That is a very high number. So how our electrical energy is going to meet this demand? So without major improvements in air conditioning energy efficiency, electrical demand for space cooling in buildings is going to increase. And the problem now is that currently we are looking at an additional of 800 gigawatt power generation. So only for meeting space cooling needs. Currently in India we are generating around 365 gigawatts, But in the future, by 2050, we are going to need only for space cooling alone, we need 800 gigawatts. So we are not even generating even 50% of that power generation. So what can we do? Either we increase the efficiency of air conditioners, or we have to move to alternative air conditioning technologies. So right now, air conditioners are being operated at their peak efficiencies, because as per even the theoretical efficiencies also, we are almost meeting that theoretical efficiencies of up to around 90%. So in increasing the efficiency, we have no scope. So we have to move to alternative air conditioning technologies. About 70% of that growth is assumed to come from residential sector alone. So this will particularly have implications for electricity networks. Residential cooling demand tends to peak when the sun has gone down, and so solar electricity production also diminishes. So I'm also going to briefly discuss what are the basic air conditioning concepts, so you can understand what are the other technologies I'm going to discuss in the coming slides. This is a typical vapor compression cycle. If you look at, we have a compressor, evaporator, expansion valve, and a condenser. So a condenser is the part where we reject the heat. That is the outdoor unit. We call it typically in an split air conditioning system. And we have a compressor and condenser combined. We have an outdoor unit, whereas a evaporator and expansion valve we have as an indoor unit. In the evaporator part, we actually get the existing cooling. So now, in order to run this compressor, that is the outdoor unit, we need an electrical energy that is from grid. So this is a very electrical energy intensive air conditioning. We all face the problem, because whenever there is an air conditioning load, typically our domestic electricity bill also increases. So, but we need comfortable cooling, but also we don't need a very high electricity bill. So what are the technologies? This is a typical psychrometric chart. Generally, we have various types of climatic conditions in India, and so for different types of climatic conditions, we have to typically design air conditioning systems as per the climatic conditions. So we generally meet those comfort conditions through this psychrometric chart. In a typical psychrometric chart, on the y-axis we have a absolute humidity scale, and on the x-axis we have a temperature. That is dry bulb temperature. So if we are moving on the x-axis towards the left side, we are actually reducing the temperature. So we are moving towards the reduction temperature. So whenever we are designing a particular system, we always try to move towards the left side, so that we want to reduce the temperature to meet the cooling load, as well as we also want to come down so that our humidity requirements also are met. These are typical climatic zonation of India. We have 5 climatic zones: hot, dry, warm, humid, composite, temperature, and cold. So we are we have all the types of climatic conditions, and we need a solution for typical cold climates like Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and also typical hot climates like Rajasthan and also Gujarat, Maharashtra, parts of Maharashtra, and we also need solutions for coastal climates, which is warm and humid. So in fact, we have all types of climatic conditions, and so if we design a single system, it may not be enough to meet all the types of climatic conditions. That is why our particular conference today is on both meeting hot as well as cold climatic conditions. We have to design our system so that it will be either meeting all the conditions, or it has to be particularly designed for that particular climatic condition. So it has to be localized design. As I have told, if this is the comfort zone, so generally when we are trying to look at from the psychrometric point of view, we try to maintain the room conditions within this comfort zone. So if we are moving towards the left, that is we are excessively cooling the air, which is also not preferable. And if you are moving towards the right, we are excessively heating the air, which is also not preferable. So we generally tend to maintain this temperature within this comfort zone. Similarly, if we are moving up, we are on the higher humid side, and if we are moving down, we are on the lower humid side. So there is a particular comfort zone that is defined inside the psychrometric chart, and we generally try to design our air conditioner so that the air which comes out of the air conditioner will be within this comfort zone. Similarly, CBRI has developed a tropical summer index, which actually says, okay, what is the required temperature and what is the optimal volume or optimal value which is to be maintained for different types of climatic conditions as well as different temperature and humidity conditions. Like for example, based on the this is a type of adaptive comfort model based on thermal sensations. On a slightly cool day, we are comfortable in the range of 19 to 25 degrees centigrade, but a typical comfortable temperature is in the range of 25 to 30 degrees centigrade. So, with an optimal value of around 27.5 degrees centigrade. So, generally, we put our air conditioners around 20 to 23 degrees centigrade. But actually, if we are trying to maintain the comfortable temperature between 25 to 30 degrees centigrade, it is okay for us, and it also saves a lot of energy. On a slightly warm day, also we have a feeling of comfort around 30 to 34 degrees centigrade. I am speaking about there are we have to move on to different alternative cooling technologies. So what are the existing alternative cooling technologies? So for buildings, we can majorly classify them as the passive cooling as well as active cooling technologies. Passive cooling technologies are those technologies which does not require any additional interventions in the building. Only during the design stage of the building, if we can make some interventions, design and construction stage of the building, if we can make some interventions, we can actually reduce lot of heat gain inside the building. We have to, for example, building physics plays a very important role, like site planning, landscaping, building space orientation, providing shading. Similarly, external surface painting on the walls as well as the roof. If we can maintain our windows with double glazed facades, and if we can maintain proper cross ventilation, and also during nights if we can maintain nocturnal ventilation. So these are only few concepts through which we can achieve cooling. There are a lot of concepts in building physics through which we can achieve alternate cooling. Similarly, we can also use renewable energy technologies like evaporative cooling, solar air conditioning, wind towers, earth air tunnel, geothermal heat exchangers, renewable energy utilization. Like these are the technologies what Dr. Tabish Alam has briefly discussed in the previous presentation. We also have active cooling technologies in which we need separate machines to actually cool the room. So these active cooling technologies also require electricity, whereas passive cooling technologies does not require electricity, only very minor amount to meet the fan load, etc. But in active cooling technologies, we need electricity, especially the vapor compression technology. That is more than 70% of the cooling technologies, like split air conditioners, window air conditioners, come under vapor compression technology. Other electric technologies also are available for cooling, though are not very famous, like magnetic refrigeration, thermoionic, thermoacoustic, thermoelectric, and thermotunneling cooling. But these are not very much applied for building technologies, but research is going on so that these technologies are also can come into. Now we are going to briefly discuss on thermal actuated technologies, absorption, adsorption, and desiccant humidification. Thermal actuated cooling technologies. We can classify thermally actuated cooling technologies into thermomechanical and heat transformation. Thermomechanical is nothing but if we are going to use a thermal energy to then produce electricity, and then then we use that electricity to run either vapor compression or Rankine cycle or Stirling cycle, then it is thermomechanical. We are mainly going to discuss a heat transformation technology, that is directly utilizing the heat uh, to for cooling. So there are like we have different types of heat sources, like there are low grade heat sources. Similarly, we also have solar heat. So we can use any of these technologies to run these different types of cooling technologies. Again, it is classified as closed cycle and open cycle. Under closed cycle, we have adsorption and absorption chillers, and open cycle we have desiccant chillers. So we have different types of refrigerants for adsorption as well as absorption, and we are going to briefly discuss on desiccant chiller, that is water silica gel, on which we are actually working. These are like I have briefly discussed on various types of technologies as well as various types of solutions. Similarly, for closed cycle, we have absorption and adsorption. These are called as absorption is called as wet systems, in which the refrigerant is water, and lithium bromide systems or ammonia water systems. And common dry systems, we have water zeolite. These are called adsorption systems: water zeolite, water silica gel, methanol activated carbon, ammonia activated carbon. So we are actually going to concentrate on open cycle systems. That is, desiccant systems. There are solid desiccant systems and liquid desiccant systems. As I have discussed, okay, what are the advantages? What are the types of capacities we can go with closed cycle systems? Generally, for closed cycle systems, they can go up to 430 kilowatts in solid phase, and in liquid phase, that is absorption chillers, we have systems even up to 5 megawatts. That is, these 5 megawatt system can cool, in fact, entire camp. For example, a campus like CBRI or IIT, it can meet the entire cooling demand. With one single system. The open cycle, if you are looking at, we can meet up to 350, maximum up to 350 kilowatts. So these are the systems that are typically used for apartment complexes or for large multi-special hospitals, something like that. So we have typical COPs of open cycle around 1. And if you are going for liquid type systems, we also have greater than 1. And liquid systems also have another advantage: they have low regeneration temperatures of around 45 to 70 degrees centigrade. So we can use evacuated tube collectors or flat plate collectors for through solar heat. So this is a typical closed absorption cycle. So here also we have a typical condenser and evaporator. So instead of a electrical compressor, we have a thermal compressor in which there is a generator and absorber part. So I'm not going to discuss very briefly, because Dr. Tabish Alam has briefly discussed about absorption and adsorption chillers. So this is an adsorption chiller. The difference between absorption chiller and adsorption chiller is that absorption chiller, it is basically liquid type, in which refrigerant will be in liquid state, whereas in adsorption chiller, the refrigerant will be in solid state. But these both are closed cycles, means they operate under low pressure, not at atmospheric pressure, but at a lower pressure. Whereas we are going to briefly discuss on open cycle, that is desiccant cooling. In desiccant cooling, we have systems which operate at atmospheric pressure. So the advantage of operating at atmospheric pressure is that systems are not needed for pressure sealing. So there is no pressure sealing required. So the total typical system cost also gets reduced. We have two important components, that is dehumidification. We have a regeneration wheel, and the second important component is the cooling unit. That is we can either you go for evaporative cooling or indirect evaporative cooling. So we have typical different types of materials available for desiccant adsorption, like zeolite water paste, zeolite foam. Different, we have calcium chloride also. This is a common available salt. Silica gel is also a very commonly available material. So we don't need any specific types of very costly materials. These are generally available at very low cost, these chemicals. So now we're going to move to the sensible cooling part, that is the evaporative cooling part. So what is the typical evaporative cooler? We have in our homes, we have different types of desert air conditioners or room desert air coolers or normal room air coolers. So the typical principle is that it will have a wet medium, or we also call it as evaporative cooling pad, through which it is completely saturated with water. And when hot dry air enters into this wet cooling pad, it becomes cold. And that is because though its internal energy is not reducing, but we perceive it as a cold because of its reduction in the total temperature. Then it is distributed through a fan, so we get a cool refreshing air. But the problem is, if we are continuously using the system, due to increase in the humidity of the system, we after some time we feel that it is not very comfortable. So that is a typical operative air cooling air conditioner. So what is the work happening here? Where we are getting the work? So for any work to be done, we need energy. So here what happens is where this heat is getting rejected. Actually, this evaporative cooling works under the principle of our nature cycle. Generally, what happens is the heat being rejected to the outer space. Once the heat rejects to the outer space, there is a precipitation, that is clouds. Clouds actually become rain, clouds form as rain, and rain water again for collects in the rivers and also in the sea, and it again evaporates. So this is a continuous cycle. So this continuous cycle, this is also called as nature cycle, and in this nature cycle we use for the typical cooling. So this is a very big engine continuously running in our nature, and we are trying to extract the energy from that engine to use as a cooling in a evaporative cooling system. So in fact, all our nature actually cools through this system. Leaves, for example, cool through the leaf surfaces. There is a cooling happening, and that is also evaporative cooling. So similarly, in our old systems, we used to have a typical pot for cooling or drinking water, as well as for putting vegetables also under cold climatic condition. That is nothing but the principle is evaporative cooling. So because there is a small pores through which water continuously evaporates through the surfaces. So what happens is because of this evaporative cooling happens, and water always stays cool. So if we are typically, if you want to look at what is happening in an evaporative cooler through a psychrometric diagram, what happens is air enters through a wet channel, as I have shown in the wet medium. So what happens is that uh, it adiabatically cools, so it almost tries to move towards the saturation line. So there is a cooling happening, as I have told you. If we are moving in the left side, left direction in the psychrometric chart, we are actually cooling is happening. So in this process from 1 to 2, the 2 is the supply air, that is cooled humidified air, and 1 is the entry air. So once the air when it moves from the wet channel through the wet channel from 1 to 2, its temperature is getting reduced. But at the same time, if we look at the psychrometric chart on the right side, that is absolute humidity scale, and if we are moving to the top, we are actually increasing the humidity. So here, though temperature is reducing, its humidity is increasing. So this is what is happening in the actual evaporative cooling. So if its humidity increases to a above the normal level, so we feel uncomfortable. So that is why we move to the next technique, that is indirect evaporative cooling. Here there are the various advantages and disadvantages. Advantages is part of the natural cooling cycle and does not need any special type of refrigerant. Even water is itself is refrigerant. Oldest and well-proven cooling technology. Desert coolers work on this principle. Uh, it cannot reduce the temperature below wet bulb temperature, not effective for warm and humid climate conditions, and increase the humidity to the air stream, as I have discussed. Now moving to the indirect evaporative cooling. So as we have discussed, this is the direct evaporative cooling. Now if we are if we are using an indirect evaporative cooling, that is nothing but an warm air. Here instead of a single stream, we are separating the stream into two streams, that is a primary stream and secondary stream. So it is like this cool air will move to another heat exchanger, where it will transfer its coldness to another stream, that is a that is a primary stream. So that is how cooling happens in an indirect evaporative cooler. So in an indirect evaporative cooler, we have actual air moving from 1 to 2. This is actually the outside air, and this is the cold air. But in order to achieve this cooling air without increase in humidity, we need another stream, that is a working air, that is which moves from 3 to 4. So here we will actually divide the supply stream into two streams. The one is moving towards 4 and one is moving towards 2. That is the air that is moving towards 4, it is actually delivered outside the window, and the air that is moving towards 2, that is delivered into the room. So if we are looking at an indirect evaporative cooler, it will, though its temperature is reducing, but its humidity is not increasing. So it is a type of cooler in which if we don't want increase in humidity, but we only require increase in reduction in temperature, then we can go for a typical indirect evaporative cooler. This is also applicable for cold for warm and humid conditions where there is a lot of humidity. So if we look at typical temperature conditions using an indirect evaporative cooler, for if we are applying such a type of climate composite climate has all types of conditions. So we have taken a composite climate, and we have simulated the indirect evaporative cooler. So on a typical day, having temperature around 45 degrees centigrade outside temperature condition, it can reduce the temperature up to 25 degrees centigrade. This type of cooling we are achieving without compressor and without refrigerant. So as I have told you, we have a comfort climatic condition at around 27.5 degrees centigrade. So if we are achieving 25 degrees centigrade, it is very well within the climate, within the comfort zone. So that is the advantage of using an indirect evaporative cooler. Without a compressor and without a refrigerant, we can meet this temperature. Similarly, we have typically considered a Roorkee type of climate in which we have a 45 degrees centigrade around 1 hour per year, 42 degrees centigrade around 63 hours per year, and around 40 degrees centigrade around 220 hours per year. Like that, if we are typically simulating those conditions, we can achieve comfort climatic conditions for cooling. Similarly, if we look at the typical climatic conditions, we are within the comfort region. So as I have told you, if you are typically considering air at three different three different relative humidities, 30 degrees, 50 degrees, and 70%. Sorry. If there is a 30% relative humidity air, it has a scope of reducing the temperature even up to 22 degrees centigrade, because its wet bulb temperature decreases. So advantages of IEC, it does not increase the humidity inside the room. It can reduce room temperature below wet bulb temperature, highly energy efficient and low cost, and compressorless operation, and eliminates transients in power supplies. So now in the indirect evaporative cooling, we have reduced the temperature up to 22 degrees centigrade. But if we want to further reduce the temperature, then we can go for, so on a typical day having around an inlet temperature of 30 degrees centigrade, whereas from an indirect evaporative cooler we can get around 22.2 degrees centigrade. And if we want to further reduce the temperature, say up to 17 degrees centigrade, then we can also integrate another wet channel, that is another evaporative cooling medium, so that we can further reduce the temperature. So without these temperatures, we are almost meeting up to the saturation line, that is 100% humidity line. So here we are almost going towards a very cold conditions, that is up to 17.4 degrees centigrade. So it is like we are always thinking that we need a compressor to achieve these conditions, but these conditions can also be achieved even without compressor, without electrical energy utilization also. So these are the indirect and direct evaporative cooling temperature conditions. So if we are looking at the on a typical, similarly for the same conditions on a typical day when we have 45 degrees centigrade, that is wet bulb temperature is around 22.51 degrees centigrade. But because of this combination, we can the dry bulb temperature can go below the wet bulb temperature up to 19.94, that is 20 degrees centigrade. So we can reach below the wet bulb temperatures also. Then there is another type of cooling, that is dew point evaporative cooling, in which in fact we can not only reach towards the saturation line, but we can go towards the dew point line. Dew point line is when you have observed in the nights around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, we can observe a lot of fog. So dew point is a condition where we almost achieve fog. So without the compressor, with a single evaporative cooler, we can go up to dew point temperatures also using a dew point cooler by operating the dew point cooler in this mode, in which however the delivery air will be reduced by up to 50% or 60% delivery air. So if you are supplying around 200 CFM, the supply air will be around only delivery air will be around only 50 CFM or 40 CFM. So we have to design for a higher fan, higher CFM ventilation. These are the results for a similar dew point temperature, in which, for example, on a similarly 45 degrees centigrade, we can reach up to wet bulb temperature up to 15.4 degrees centigrade. So that is a very huge reduction in temperatures. So now moving on to solar thermal air conditioners. So This particular indirect evaporative cooler, what I have discussed until now, this will be the actual cooling mechanism happening. However, how to reduce the humidity? So in order to reduce the humidity, we will be using a desiccant dehumidifier, and we have been experimenting on this facility and we have achieved room temperatures even below the wet bulb temperature by 2 to 4 degrees centigrade. So wet bulb temperature is a very comfortable room temperature, and we can reduce the temperature by 2 to 4 degrees centigrade below the wet bulb temperature also. So these are various results in which we have reduced the temperature below the wet bulb temperatures. And this is a typical solar thermal air conditioner's airflow simulation conditions. Here also we have reduced the temperatures below wet bulb temperatures. So finally, conclusions. Solar thermal air conditioner serves as an attractive alternative to vapor compression based air conditioners. Evaporative cooling being operated in various modes, and it offers very low cost cooling technology. Indirect direct evaporative cooling is a very attractive solution to reduce the temperature below wet bulb temperature and can easily maintain comfort conditions. Solar thermal air conditioner has no compressor and no refrigerant, and it meets the ICAP goals, Indian Cooling Action Program of India, Action Plan of India, and also it does not require any import of technologies because, for example, the normal split air conditioners or window air conditioners, the compressors are imported from outside India. So because and also refrigerant gas is also being imported from outside India. 90% of compressors, 100% of refrigerant gas is coming from outside of India. So we don't have any manufacturing facilities in India for compressors. So with these technologies, we can meet the Make in India initiatives also. Thank you.